All right. Ostensibly, we are live. Lisa, how are you?
Hey, my friend, how are you? I'm doing
I'm
good.
yeah, I'm doing really good. I'm excited. Just this popped into my head, right? You're a runner. You're an avid runner. You're one. I think you would even admit at times a crazy runner. Like I
Yeah,
think that.
well,
And
gentle.
I think you know Anthony Kunkel, or at
Yep,
least have
yep.
interacted, know of him at least. He's pretty awesome. I actually had a female bodybuilder, reach out and was interested in playing around with the product. And
Hmm.
so she ended up buying a case, and I sent her an extra case of product so that she can
Wow.
really, really play with it. It's really cool to see athletes, doing well. And I didn't even share this before we started. Um, a super Bollywood star just ordered some product, right? And I know of him, not because I do like Bollywood movies, but not because I'm some sort of Bollywood aficionado or something. But I know he's worked with a friend of mine, Chris Geffen,
Yep.
the trainer, and so super cool to see. Or every now and then I'm paying
Ooh,
attention. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Breaking
awesome.
into Bollywood, Hollywood, into the big podcasts of the world. You're just smashing it.
Yeah, it's super cool. So how about you? What's going on your end of the world?
Yeah. Lots going on, and too many things, too many balls to juggle. But today, we've got lots of great longevity stuff that I wanted to sort of bring to everybody's attention, and a few new things that are going on in the longevity world, which is what we're all about, right?
Yeah.
And trying to keep people up with some of the latest and greatest. So, one of the things that caught my eye this week was AI, right? So, we all know AI and everything. ChatGPT or GPT-4B and Retro Sciences had a bit of a breakthrough. So this is a specialized AI model. I actually did a video about it on my channel. And it's an OpenAI and Retro Sciences collaboration. And it's a specialized model. It's not open to the public, but they've managed to get a 50 times greater efficiency in reprogramming adult cells into pluripotent stem cells using like the Yamanaka factors, the story of the Yamanaka factors, compared to the conventional methods. So this is, like protein stuff, protein folding, all of that sort of thing. And recent findings have showed engineered variants in some of the genes, retro, SOX, KLF, cocktails, some whole lot of names that you would never understand, reduced DNA double strand breaks in aged cells, suggesting better genomic stability and potential for reversing cellular aging. So that's really exciting. So there's right, we need to be able to reprogram our cells to be what we were. You and I think last time we talked about the SB000 science that had just come out about this one gene that they were able to reverse aging.
Yeah.
And this is in the same vein. And they're using AI and having these breakthroughs with these specialized models that can crunch tons and millions of, data to speed up that process. So this is like, when I was reading this, I was like, this is really exciting. Once again, another massive breakthrough for giving us back our youth, which you and I are waiting for. Like,
Yeah.
come on, hurry up.
Patiently.
Yeah, exactly. Like, please hurry up. Genomic stability, one of the hallmarks of aging, is something that we need to really work on. And so they've been able to do this. But the thing is, I was thinking about it, and I was listening to another guy in one of the Bitcoin podcasts that I listened to, Balaji Srinivasan, who's a just incredible dude, and he was talking about like Demis Hassabis and people like this are talking about we're going to cure aging by 2035 and all disease will be gone and everything like this. And he said something that I really think is a pertinent point. He said, we're going to have a technology. That's not the problem. It's the regulations, the regulators, and it's big pharma and lobby groups that will slow and stop this process. And is AI democratized enough that maybe we'll get these breakthroughs anyway? Or are we going to have to go to jurisdictions where you have more self-sovereignty over your health and, your wealth and, which is, I do a lot about that as well, self-sovereignty and health and wealth in my channel. And because what I've seen is when we've already got some incredible breakthroughs, you know, and things like hyperbaric and peptides and all of these amazing things that are already out into the world, but they just get squashed and, you know, they're not adopted. You know, like things like intravenous vitamin C, which is like, I don't know, 70, 80 years worth of research now behind it, just still being ignored, sidelined, not in the mainstream. So for me, the question is, you know, these incredible scientists and this AI tools that they have and all of this, but are we actually going to get access to it within a timeline, or are they going to tie it up in tape for 20 years of clinical research, you know, and regulations, and you know, you've got to do this trial and that trial and cost billions of dollars, and therefore we never ever see the light of day. That's my concern. Like, I think the breakthroughs are happening, and I think we could be already reversing our aging if we had access to the stuff that we had. And the guy Balaji, who I mentioned before, he talks about we need pioneers. We need brave people who want to, like you and me probably, types of people who want to try all these things out, right? Who want to test them, and that should be allowed to access them with, you know, informed consent and do, you know, with the safety guardrails. You know, we definitely need safety stuff for sure, but not stifling the innovation, because, you know, it's because of crazy scientists and people all around the planet and now, you know, history that we've actually had all these breakthroughs, right? Some brave people who have tested stuff out on themselves before they actually, you know, went to clinical trials and all of that sort of stuff. So can we, you know, like give people who want, or people who are at the edge of the cliff who have terminal illnesses, or they're very old, or they want to try stuff, and what do you got to lose, right?
Yep.
That they should have the right to be able to try these things. I'm very much a proponent of the right to try, not only in this, but in, you know, like in dire consequences. I've been fighting for the right to try law over here in New Zealand after losing my dad 5 years ago in hospital to sepsis, and I wasn't able to get him intravenous vitamin C when I knew the research was a 50%, you know, drop in mortality rate, according to the published research by Dr. Merrick and others. Wasn't allowed to do it, even though he was dying. I had no other option. So why is there this not, you know, this right to try? I love this discussion to start, you know, people starting to, from the ground up, be talking about these things, right? Because then we can create change when we all start talking about things and advocating for things. So yeah, that was my little rant, but that was GPT-4B, and Retro Science is doing some pretty cool stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to GPT-4.3 because I've got some questions there, because we just hopped on. I didn't really realize. So I think there's a lot of different rabbit holes we could go down, right? Because here we are on a podcast talking about longevity, right? On a broadcast talking about longevity. You talk about longevity. We're talking about how do we roll the age of our cells back. And you asked a very interesting question that even our conversation makes significantly more complicated, which is, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
And I think you and I are more and more of the mindset that you have a lot more life to lose.
Yes.
So it's really an interesting juxtaposition of like, hey, I want to try this, but the risks are even greater than we may realize, right? It could be that we solve all sorts of medical conditions in the next 5 years. And so you're struggling and pushing hard to solve something that would have still gotten you to 5 years and no more, right? It's interesting. I just wanted to throw that out because it's potentially, hey, I was going to die in 8 years, so I'm really pushing hard for stuff, and that caused me to die in 5 instead of 8. And if I had gotten across the finish line at 5, I could have lived significantly more. Anyway, I don't know if you thought about that at all.
I think, yeah, and I think there's also the opposite, is like with all these regulations and things that, you know, hold things back in the clinical, which, you know, they're trying to keep us safe, right? But that, you know, if I'm being kind, they're trying to keep us safe, right?
Yeah.
But is that sometimes we're losing more lives because they're not allowing things to have breakthroughs, like they're not allowing the stuff to happen. And so we are losing people every single day to things that we don't need to be losing them to, you know? Yeah. And so there's a cost of not progressing the science and not letting it go, as well as a cost to risking. So it's about informed consent, right? It's about you making the choice. It's like when you invest in something, you have to be okay with the fact that you might be wrong and this may go south, right?
Yeah.
So if you are okay with that, then you should have the right to invest in the thing that you want to invest in. Right? It's the same thing. There are no guarantees in life. Someone asked me a couple of weeks ago on a show, they said, well, with the investments that you're making and doing, are you okay if it all goes to zero? And I said, yeah. I mean, I don't want it to, obviously.
Yeah.
I made the best decision at the time that I could make, and I'm not going to be paralyzed by analysis, that I'm not going to take anything because, with the way that the fiat system's going, you've got to make some choices, right? There's risk to act and there's risk not to act.
Yeah.
And we've got to sort of weigh up those two sides of the coin, I think, when we're talking about these incredible breakthroughs, is that if you're terminally ill with cancer or some other thing, and there's a possible, could be wrong, could be maybe not work, but hey, this might progress science and it may help you, then that should be your choice to have a go at that if you want to, and I'd like to see.
I think here in the United States, there are exemptions for things like that. Like you can enter clinical trials a lot earlier. There's consent and there's all sorts of things going on. It's funny that you bring this up because I was just listening to a Moonshots episode, right? Peter Diamandis' podcast.
Yeah, that was what Balaji was on.
Yeah, and they are talking about insulin, right? And the fact that insulin was actually tried on all sorts of people and animals before there were clinical trials, and we actually wouldn't have this life-saving drug insulin without these people willing to inject themselves personally.
And they didn't do it with the normal FDA approval process because back then there was none. Right, there was none, and so they progressed it very quickly, got it through, saved millions of lives. It's a brilliant example. And then the FDA, when they did come into existence, they've grandfathered a lot of those things in, thank goodness, right? But every new one has had to go through this really arduous process, which makes sense to a degree, but to the point that it's it's cost billions of dollars to get any drug through. It costs 95% or something ridiculous fail, along the way when they probably don't need to. And now, with AI being able to crunch data like it can, and they can test millions of molecules against each other in combinations and things like that, we haven't been able to do that scale before. We're going to have breakthroughs upon breakthroughs upon breakthroughs. How the hell are the regulators going to keep up? Look, for starters. And, even in the crypto space, like I talk about a lot too, is the regulators are not keeping up. They are in America, much more so now, right? But they're very often not keeping up with the technology that's changing. And this is a problem. Like, it's nobody's fault, but it's a real problem, because how do you be an expert in every damn thing when you're a politician, right? You can't be. So you have to rely on good advisors that, talk to you about this new technology or that new technology. Really, really tough discussions, because the rate of change is going faster than any of us really can keep up with.
Yeah.
Unless the brightest 1% of the world, maybe, and the people on moonshots, maybe. The rest of us are probably not going to be keeping right across it all. And so, how do we make good regulation without over-regulating? And, I think what will happen, Chris, is there'll be jurisdictions around the world where they allow medical freedoms and property right freedoms, and there'll be a bit of a split in which countries allow you to have more rights and which countries, and it won't be what you traditionally think. I don't think is your democratic countries, like up until this date. It sort of seems to be turning on its ear a bit as things start to change, so really interesting thing to watch and see what unfolds. And I know a lot of people are going to certain countries where they can get, whether it's exosomes or stem cells or genetic reprogramming therapies and things that are in jurisdictions that are allowing it. And medical tourism's been around for a while, so I think that's going to increase So, but it shouldn't be just in the realms of the super wealthy, right? It would be great if we can get at people that don't have to shift halfway around the planet in order to get something that they need to live a healthy life.
And like so many things, so many technologies, it will always start with the super wealthy, right? I mean, if you just look at Elon Musk's strategy for launching, the electric vehicle into the stratosphere, right, was let me make an expensive, high profit margin sports car to prove the technology, to prove that the car doesn't have to be a Prius, it can actually be sexy, right? And that was the strategy. You start with the wealthy because they're the ones who can actually fund it.
Totally.
And then you're right, it does need to be democratized. You mentioned the 50% reduction in mortality rate as it relates to vitamin C, intravenous vitamin C. Was that related to a specific disease, or is that all cause? What is that?
This was a study by Dr. Paul Merrick, a very famous doctor, and it held, there were others involved, and it was a sepsis trial.
Okay, specifically sepsis. Okay.
Listen, so yeah, it was in relation to that, but there's some incredible research around vitamin C. I'd encourage people to go and look, read the book Curing the Incurable by Dr. Thomas Levy. Now, there's a guy that you should interview on your show. I've had him on multiple times. He's a cardiologist, but he's also an attorney, and he's also the author of, I think, about 15 books now, including Curing the Incurable. He's also written Death by Calcium, which is a really interesting book, Hidden Epidemic. There's some really incredible books, but the vitamin C book especially was the work of the early pioneers in the vitamin C space, and what vitamin C does in the body is absolutely astounding when you get it at the right level. So, as an adjunct therapy, it's used in cancer, it's used for pain relief, it's used for obviously the immune system and that type of thing as well, but collagen production, it's just used in the body. Like the macrophages need it. It's like, explain to me in layman's terms, Lau, but vitamin C is inside the macrophages. So when it goes and does phagocytosis and eats up the baddies, the viruses, the pathogens, right, it needs to have vitamin C on board as its ammo. Without that, it's got no ammo. And so it can't kill, it'll eat the bacteria and spew it back out again, again, layman's terms here, but that's the way I remembered it in my head from the lectures that I've listened to. And so you need this ammo on board on your macrophages to be able to go and get rid of viruses, get rid of the pathogens and stuff. So huge amount of work by people like Kleiner, Dr. Ron Honninghake out of the Reardon Institute, Dr. Thomas Levy, obviously. Over here, we've got some incredible researchers as well. Margaret Visser, I don't know. I've done so many, Dr. Barry Fowler, he's another one. So many lectures on vitamin C. I'm a huge fan of doing intravenous vitamin C. Also quite a fan of the live-on lipospheric vitamin C. It's a very good way of getting it into the cell if you can't get IVs because they're very expensive and difficult to get for a lot of people. The lipospheric gets into the cell very quickly without any energy expenditure. So when you have normal vitamin C, often it's very hard on the gastrointestinal system, so you can only take so much at a time. And it also requires the expenditure of energy to get it into the cell because it uses the receptors. Liposomal doesn't. It goes straight through because it uses a phospholipid liposome, and it goes straight into the cell. So it's a very the next best way, so to speak, of getting it into the cell. So I've done intravenous vitamin C for my mum for the last 8, 9 years, and went really hard when she had brain cancer. And we can't do it the intravenous anymore because her veins are just so knackered. We can't get it in anymore. So what I do instead of is high doses of the liposomal vitamin C every day. And that, touch wood, we're getting an MRI next week, 4.5 years since her diagnosis, and she was given weeks to live. So, we're doing very well, but we have an MRI next month. So we'll see if we're still winning now not having the liposome, the intravenous vitamin C that I was doing on a weekly basis prior, and now can't do. So yeah, the alternative I've used is the lipospheric.
And okay, so now let's go back to AI. You talked about they have kind of solved kind of Yamanaka factor related challenges in the cells, preventing DNA breaks. Is that a calculation, or is that a like a prediction, or that's the same thing, or is that some study and it's dug into it and actually pulled it out of existing data?
Well, I don't know that too much of the details, but they've created like 50 times greater efficiency in reprogramming the adult cells back to their pluripotent stem cells. So there was one of the Yamanaka factors, the c-MYC gene, MYC, that was particularly problematic because it often caused cancer. So and the Yamanaka factors would take the cells back too far, so they de-differentiate too far back, right? And what we want, which we talked about in the SB000 video that I did as well. They managed to take the cells, some of the Yamanaka factors, mix them with other genes that they used AI to find, and then reprogram the cells back. I think it was 13 years or something in these skin cells that they used, and without de-differentiating the cell. In other words, they didn't take it back to a point where it didn't have any idea what it was. So a skin cell still stayed a skin cell. It didn't turn into a liver cell, because that's one of the problems when you take the cells back, because stem cells can become anything, right? They can become any cell in the body. That's how our body sort of repairs itself. But if you take cells back in time and you de-differentiate them, then you can end up with going too far, and then you can end up causing cancer, basically, is the problem. That's always been the problem with the Yamanaka factors, because that was a massive breakthrough in 2006. But we haven't really seen anything in the clinic from it, because they keep running into the trouble with cancer. And now they can use the AI to scan for different genes and different combinations of genetics, Yamanaka factors and others that they're bringing into the mix, so that now they can actually work out what reprograms those cells, takes them back to be a younger, more youthful state, without de-differentiating, without causing cancer. So we are at the cusp, and they've managed to do that with a 50 times greater efficiency, and they continue to use this AI modeling to crunch the data, so to speak. So that's
I just pulled that up. It looks like, they calculated it, they engineered it, and then they've tested it on cells, right? So we're not in vivo yet, but we're in petri dish studies in vitro showing this improvement. That's amazing. And it's exactly what I've been talking about probably for 9 months, maybe going on a year, this amazing stat, right? That in 1950, medical information doubled every 50 years, every 50 years.
Yeah.
The stat I started using it 9 months to a year ago was that medical information is doubling every 3 months, which is hard to like. So what that means is, take all of the medical information that we had at the beginning of 2025. At the end of 2025, we're going to have 16 times that much information, right? Like that's doubling every 3 months. It's incomprehensible, right? Yep. And that number, I've always said, doesn't really include AI. And my prediction was that AI's impact is less about writing papers faster, right? Like that doesn't take that much time. It's certainly faster. But it is exactly what you brought to this broadcast today, which is like, hey, the calculations are, and I think we mentioned this in the last time we got together. I had just heard Dr. David Sinclair talking about the use of AI, and it's the same kind of thing where they're looking at the sites that different chemicals can bind to. And once they understand what it can do, when you bind to a particular receptor site, then it can, what's going to happen. And so now they're looking at the chemicals that will bind to 1, 2, or even 3, which was not even on their radar before, because like just calculate, going through the list of chemicals and seeing what would actually successfully bind in one site was, months of work. And now they're doing 3 sites in days. Like it's
mind blowing, and it's exponential. And we just don't, as humans, get our head around exponential very well,
No.
right? Because it's not this nice linear progression that we're sort of used to. All of a sudden, it's exploding. And of course, nothing's keeping up. None of us, and none of the regulators, and none of the systems, and none of the hospitals, and nobody's keeping up with the science. Is sort of racing on ahead of us. And how do we get that implemented into our archaic, sometimes not even digitized systems? This is the sort of problem we've got, that we're facing. But it is really, really exciting to see, because used to talking about protein folding, and they said used to take a PhD student their entire thesis to do one protein folding sort of structure. Now AI can do it in your lunch break. It's done in minutes. So that, of course, is just going to mean we can decode biology so much faster. We can understand what's going on. And when you think on a single cell, there's just billions of processes happening every second inside every cell. We need this sort of level of data crunching to even have a shit show of ever actually decoding what's going on in the cell at the cellular level. And the cell is where it's all at. The organs, the systems are all great, but you've got to take it back down to that actual single cellular level to understand what's actually really happening in the human body. And we're scratching the surface still, even with all this amazing stuff. So, we've got a long way to go. And with AI, is it going to reach AGI and ASI and all of this stuff? Well, from a medical point of view, that's where that stuff's really exciting. On the other side, it's terrifying. But hopefully there'll be some good stuff come out of it before it kills us all.
Yeah. Well, like I always say, I would like to be the first to welcome the computer overlords to this universe. I think I just heard. Well, I know I just saw a video with Huberman, and they were talking about, hey, I forget who was interviewing him, but they're like, it was a doctor, and the doctor said, I have friends who believe that we've figured out 90% of what goes on in human biology. And Huberman, I think he came back and said, nah, we probably have 1%. It's not even 10% of what's actually going on. And I think, so just use that stat, medical information doubling every 3 months.
Yep.
What happens when it's doubling every day?
Yeah.
Right. Like we're moving in that direction. And at some point, I don't know, I find it absolutely amazing. And it's, for me, you kind of started, we're thinking about longevity. We're thinking about how can we be younger? How can we roll back the age of our cells? And for me, just that fact that medical information is doubling so fast, at a minimum, really quickly, like I'm talking next 5 years, 10 years tops, we're going to know either that we can solve all these problems, or have even if we're still confused in 5 years, maybe there's some stuff that we can't solve. But I think we're actually going to be on the right place where we're like, okay, we know that we can solve them. Maybe we don't have enough compute yet. Certainly there are some geniuses working on how to get enough compute for AI. That's an amazing journey in and of itself. I listened to a podcast with Lex Friedman. Well, on Lex Friedman, he had some amazing people and talking about what Elon Musk has done for the AI associated with Tesla. I mean, it's amazing what that guy can do.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a lecture with a financial analyst on Saturday on Tesla and the impact that that's going to have. When you start to look at the bigger vision and the integratedness, and a lot of people don't like Elon Musk, but put that aside for a moment. Just what the impact of the companies are going to have and how integrated they are. And the AI that he's got is really the biggest Colossus, is the biggest computer on the planet. Plus you've got Tesla cars running around the planet collecting data all the time. Plus you've got all the battery packs. Plus you've got FSD. You've got, SpaceX. You've got Starlink. You've got, when you start I'm on with Cern Basher, brilliant financial analyst, and he's like, when you start to add these all together into the bigger plan of things, it's just like, holy crap, this is really big. Like this is, and people think of it as a car company. It's not a car company, I can tell you that much. Nor is it just an AI company. It is so much more. And then don't even get on to robotics and stuff. So yeah, there's going to be massive changes coming at society. So yeah, that's going to be. I did a session with CERN this week, but I've got a part 2 coming up on Saturday. Really excited for that. He's an absolutely brilliant analyst. So it breaks down companies and finances and excuse me, financial systems. And what's happening in the macro world and that. So yeah, if anyone's interested in that type of stuff.
So we're based in Houston, right? So there is currently a trial of Tesla vehicles running in Austin.
Yeah, of course.
It hasn't expanded its area, which I don't take as a good sign, right? Like if it was rock solid, they would have already expanded the area. But who knows? Maybe this is a regulatory problem. I can tell you, my wife has a Tesla. I have a Tesla. They drive really amazing, and I would not take a nap. Like, no way would I take a nap. I can tell you a lot of my interventions are often in that it's going too slow and I just feel like bad in traffic. Like the cars just give it a little bit of accelerate faster. But there are some situations where and you think about where a car needs to be. I know this is a sidetrack from longevity, but you think about where a car needs to be for you to be comfortable in it. It's not 99%, it's not 99.9%. It's not 99.99%. Like it's like there's a ways to go. But when they switched to AI,
like humans are dangerous as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, I always loved what he said. Like when the first person died in a Tesla, and he's like, yeah, I look at the data, and people are like, oh, are you going to turn off autopilot? He's like, it would be unconscionable to turn off autopilot. It's already saving lives and
exactly.
Yeah.
We had plane crashes before we had planes commercially, right? We had train crashes before we had trains everywhere. This is, people die in car crashes every single day. Do we stop that? Let's stop putting the baby out with the bathwater. All of these technologies have their dangers, and all of these things that we do in life have risk factors. The technology has to be at a certain level, and when they get to that level that it's shown to be safer than a human, then it will be set free into the wild. They're starting FSD down here in Australia shortly, I think, this month, because it's not been down this end of the planet. I mean, in New Zealand, we haven't got it yet because we don't have anything, because we're miles behind everything. But yeah, we'll adopt it century probably. But it is, really. I saw a video of a truck in China that didn't even have a cab. It didn't have a driver, and it was going on the highway. It's in China. They're doing some crazy stuff. So yeah, but coming back to biology.
Yeah, let's get back to longevity.
Longevity and biology. I had a really interesting podcast this week with a lady, Dr. Tina Pears, fantastic person, on something called augmented NAC. Have you come across this one?
I have not.
Yeah, I have to listen to this. This is really good for anyone who's suffering from long COVID or any sorts of problems after COVID or things. This augmented NAC is, they've found that NAC can break down spike protein, right? So that's interesting, like, to a small degree, but somewhere between 3 and 12% in the studies that have been done. NAC can sort of break it into 6 pieces, sort of thing, but it's not 100% sort of thing. They've now created a product called augmented NAC, and there was a quantum physicist involved, so immediately it's going to get difficult, right?
Yeah.
So augmented NAC is, the way she explained it is, it's like having a bunch of soldiers all milling around, but nobody's organizing them, and they're all just doing their thing. But they are an army, but they're not really doing anything because they're not all set up. Then the sergeant comes along and he says, oh, everybody get into line, and starts yelling orders, and they all snap to attention with their rifles and they're ready for action. And she said that's the difference between the normal NAC and the this augmented NAC. It's sort of, they've used quantum physics somehow to line it up like a laser beam instead of a diffuse light. It's sort of like all lined up. So anyway, the clinical research shows that it kills 99.8% of, or breaks apart the spike protein. So people that are dealing with long COVID and not recovering, or any of that type of thing, check this video out that releases tomorrow here with Dr. Tina Pearce on augmented NAC. So I'm trialing it out for us and just for other things as well, not because NAC is brilliant. I like NAC for a whole lot of stuff. And this is a more potent form of it. So that's one of the interesting interviews that I've had this week. And then another thing that I did a video, just a solo video on, was something called mitosynergy, which is a new form of copper bound to niacin. So normally the copper is in an oxidized form, so it's copper +2. And this is a copper 1. So it's not an oxidized, a reduced form. So it's available to the cell at the point of, so in the electron transport chain, you have your what do you call them? Complexes. And then you have on the fourth complex, the cytochrome C oxidase. And this donates that copper at the cytochrome C oxidase. So it's a very powerful for mitochondria repair. It supports ATP production, really good for mental clarity and brain fog, antioxidant, reduces inflammation, supports connective tissue. So copper is known to do a lot of these things, but when you have that oxidized form of copper, it can be quite toxic. And so you've got zinc and copper are always antagonistic of each other. And if you got low zinc, then your copper might be too high. But this is a bioavailable form that actually gets into the cell, gets to the place where it needs to work, which is at the cytochrome C oxidase and that electron transport chain, and helps with your mitochondrial support. And I also did a lecture on it in relation to hair graying as a possible, there's not enough studies to say this is going to reverse hair graying, but mechanistically it would make sense that this supports the melanocytes. The melanocytes are very energy drawing cells. They need a lot of energy, and helps with the melanocytes and makes more energy. So if you're interested in mitosynergy and the hair graying side of it, or from the energy production side of it, go and check out that video and have a listen. So really, with the mitochondrial side, I mean, mitochondria is at the core of everything. When the mitochondria go offline, you've not got any energy. So something that's going to support that with the copper, could be a really exciting supplement as well. So check that one out.
So that's two different two different episodes.
Two different things. Yep, two different ones. With Dr. Tina Pearce on augmented NAC, and the other one was mitosynergy. This was the solo cast that I did, just analysing mitosynergy and this copper 1, or Cooney-Merspear as it's called, but it's a copper with a niacin attached, which makes it much more bioavailable form of copper, designed for absorption at the cellular level at that cytochrome C oxidase, where you need the energy production. It's the last sort of step in the energy chain there. So really excited for that. I'm testing that out, seeing if my hair stopped growing grey. I have noticed more power, like more speed in the gym. So when I'm running, and more power. So I'm pretty excited from that perspective. Too early to say on the hair graying stuff. That takes months, obviously, to see.
So somebody asked a question. This is certainly, I've never interviewed anybody about Huntington's disease. I don't know if you have.
No, this person quite often pops up on my podcast.
Oh, okay.
I don't actually know. They often write here, but it's not something that I've focused in on, unfortunately. Sorry, Patty.
Wish we could provide some more insights. So I'm definitely interested in augmented NAC. I put a link to your podcast, so that'll go out on most of the channels. If you're on a if you're listening to this on a channel that doesn't have it, you just need to look for Pushing the Limits podcast, right, with Lisa Tamati.
Yep.
I'm going to share. I'm really, and I know I shared this before. I'm just really excited. I was able to interview Dave Asprey about his recent book, Heavily Meditated. First off, what a great title, right? Heavily Meditated.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, Dave is awesome in so many ways. I know some people have some challenges with him. But I was actually it was pretty cool because he actually talks about being on the spectrum. And my son, we haven't had him formally kind of diagnosed or whatever, but it's clear like he's on the spectrum. He's not deep in it or anything. But at the beginning of Dave's book, he's talking about his experiences growing up. And one of them, I had my son listen to it, and my son was like, exactly, like this passionate, and the phrase was, right. The phrase was, hey, while other kids are trying to figure out how to socialize and to read subtle social cues, I'm over in the corner trying to figure out how does gravity work. And that's when my son was like, exactly. Like, I'm not worried about the social cues. I'm just trying to figure out how gravity works. So I thanked,
by the way.
Yeah. So I thanked him. I thanked Dave for kind of being open about that, and honestly, a really good book. Like I would recommend that for so many. I'm sure you are too, where the book The Body Keeps the Score came up in an IG live that I did today. Lots of conversations about storing trauma physically in our bodies, about this impact that it has. I don't know if I probably introduced you to Patrick Wanis, my friend. He's an Aussie, and he's a human behavior expert, and he has a process called SRTT, Subconscious Rapid Transformation Technique. And it's been, I look at that. I've using his process, or with his guidance and his process, I've overcome so many things that would have held me back or would have continued to hold me back, positively impacting my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my kids, my business, my relationship with my business. I mean, just so many things. It really is amazing. You think about big T and little t, and that, you don't have to have what people might classically call trauma negatively impact you, right? It is what it is to you. Anyway, I'm surprised I haven't mentioned him.
I think you have mentioned him, and an intro would be good. Yeah. God knows I could do with some help with the trauma.
That's it's honestly, it's all I'll remember the first time I ever did a session with him, and he is so much better now than he was in that first session. And I remember going out to a pub that night, looking around, and not from any position of condescension, but from this position of, I just solved something so innocuous that was such holding me back in so many ways. Like it should have meant nothing, right? Like should have. And it was holding me back in so many ways. So I was just kind of sitting back, looking across the room going, all of you all are screwed. Because if this little tiny thing is holding me back in so many ways, I know everyone has this. So, 100%. Like,
I need to meet this guy and see if we can get some trauma out. Because you hold it in your body, and you hold it in your tissues, and it affects everything. And you and I are, very science focused. We're very like, okay, give me the supplement, give me the exercise, give me I'll do it all. But I've struggled with the actual the mental side of it, like the trauma, like unfortunately, the traumatic 10 years of deaths and losing babies and all sorts. 10 years of looking after a disabled mum, and all of this shit that you have. Life. It's called life. And how do you get that out? Like how do you actually deal with that on a body, because you can do all the doing, you can do all the exercises and the right stuff, and I think do all that very, very well, but I probably haven't focused enough on going internal or doing whatever it is to release it out of the tissues. Patrick Wanis, I'll have a look at him. He might be able to help.
And I'll introduce you. By the way, I always recommend this to friends. You could do, and this would take some guts, right? you could record a live session for a podcast, and you could record it and decide whether you're going to use it or not, right? Because it could get it will get very emotional. And you could decide, I don't want to share it, or you could decide you do want to share it, so you're not committed just by recording it. But yeah, I will absolutely introduce you. He's a spec. I'm looking forward. I'm actually going to there's an event in Miami. My next event is in Scottsdale. It's JJ Virgin's Mindshare. I think that's 2 weeks out. And then the following week, so we get back from that and then fly immediately out. I'm going to record a podcast with Ben Azadi. He's amazing. His new book, Metabolic Freedom, amazing. And then I'm going to an event. I think there's 2 events. I'm going to try and get to both of them in Miami, and that's where Patrick is based. So I'm, with any luck, I'll get to meet up with him.
No, you mean, gosh, you get to live the high life going to all these conferences. Meanwhile, I'm stuck in New Zealand.
It's a long way away.
Yeah, we don't have. We were actually trying to, I tried to start a longevity conference a year ago, and then just had too much on my plate. But someone else has taken the idea up. A friend of mine, so he's just starting on that process now to get a longevity conference going down here, because we need one. So hopefully, Charlie, shout out to Charlie. Hopefully he can pull that one off, and I can help him do it. But you can only take so many projects on at once, right? And I had too many on my plate. But coming back to some of the other just topics that have sort of come on my radar this week. There was a recent vitamin D and DNA integrity. A new Harvard study found that daily vitamin D supplementation, which how easy is that, helps preserve DNA integrity, particularly by protecting telomeres. So key markers of cellular aging. So it suggests a potential role for vitamin D in slowing biological aging. And they used a 2,000 IU dose, so quite a pretty minor dose, really. I'm on a lot more than that, over, I think it was a 4-year period. And they, found that it protected the telomeres, which I've had Dr. Bill Andrews on my show and actually done a whole course with him, and he's the telomere king. And telomeres are sort of the one thing that we have to solve if we're going to get over 125 years, because of that Hayflick limit type of problem. The shortening of the telomeres means that, we get instability and stuff. So vitamin D, people, check your levels. Ideally, check them in your blood, and then supplement from there, so that you know where you're at. So you don't go too high, but most people are too low. And this, if you're getting lots of flus and lots of colds, or your immune system's not doing what it should, then maybe it's your vitamin D levels. And on that point, I'm still working on my immune age calculator that I think I mentioned to you last time. So now I'm deep in the doo-doo with software developers.
That's always fun.
I don't even know what the heck they're saying to me half the time, but I'm trying to get this app out so that it's more stable and does what it's meant to do. But that's pretty exciting. So it's an immune age calculator that gives you a real deep breakdown on what your immune system's doing in each part of the immune system, so that okay, maybe you've got a thrombotic risk, or maybe it looks like you might want to go and get some cancer checks done, or you've got too lower lymphocyte count, which is very common as we age. So lymphocytes being a real major factor. And so I developed this app originally for our product, for Rejuvenate Pro, or Cellular Restore, it's called in the States. Yep. You've got the Rejuvenate Pro. It's about to hit the US. It's en route as we speak. Hopefully the tariffs and things don't take it out by the time we get there, because we've had problems shipping to the States from New Zealand this week. But it's called Cell Restore now in the US. So it's got a different name just because of trademark issues. So I made this app, this immune age calculator app.
By the way, I'm going to take my 3 capsules right now. It's been a while.
Another bottle from me. But it's really powerful for the lymphocyte. So what's your lymphocyte count? And the lymphocyte is in a number of the ratios that I calculate in my calculator. You got your platelet to lymphocyte ratio, neutrophil to lymphocyte, monocyte to lymphocyte ratio. So your lymphocytes are really, really one of the most important core pieces of your immune system. So if you can get your lymphocytes up to a good level, once you get to our age, it's a real target that you should be going after. So watch in your blood work, if you keep taking Rejuvenate, like, you know, is your lymphocyte count going up? Especially, that would be one to follow. But yeah, I'll let you know when I've got that app actually stabilized and done, and maybe we can do a podcast on it. But that would be, yeah. So working with the developers and tearing my hair out at the moment.
Yeah, so I just learned from my brother-in-law, he solved a software problem using an AI tool, and he did it super fast. So I don't know if you want to, you know, maybe dig into it in the software tool. Let me see if I can find it. Lovable.dev.
Oh yes, Lovable. Yeah. No, I use another one. But what I found with the vibe coding tools is that they'll get you to a demo level. They won't get you to a stabilized app level, like a really solid front end, back end, you know, and what a mess for the developer to actually undo is what I've found. That's been my experience, obviously.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you'll get it to a certain level, and which is great, because then as people like me that are not developers can at least get the concept out, get a demo showing what the heck you can achieve with this type of stuff. But when it comes to lots of people using the app, it being stable, it being connected to the right things, it collecting the right data in the right way, and the privacy and all of that sort of stuff, then you need to probably get a developer, you know, involved, which is the way that we've gone now, because yeah, it held more promise than it actually delivered in the end, and I've heard that from quite a lot of other people. Not to say that in 3 months' time that may be a completely different ball game and they have got it all sorted, but the one that I used was Replit, and it had some major issues. And it will tell you it's doing everything correctly, and it just doesn't. You know, like hundreds of hours later, you're still like going in circles, and that's when I have to get the pros involved here. So I actually, you know, they talk about software developers going out of fashion, and we're not going to need them anymore. I actually think they've got more work coming at them, because in a way, a lot of people like me who want to get their knowledge into something like this haven't been able to do it before, now can get it started, but then we'll run into problems.
Yeah.
So then,
well, and it gets you to the point where you can prove the value to others and potentially raise money or confidence.
Yeah, all of that type of stuff. But when you actually want to do it, you need these experts who know what they're doing.
and what was the one you're using called?
Replit. So there's Lovable, Replit, Cursor. Those are the 3 vibe coding ones that I know about. And then, of course, even ChatGPT and Gemini and things are got better coding things happening now. But yeah, those are the ones that are vibe coding tools that you can use, and then so you can speak stuff into existence, so to speak. But you will find it has its limitations.
Yeah. And I use it for, I do kind of commission calculations. And so I'm able to like take screenshots and like do a calculation and like, that's wrong because you missed this, and you can correct it. And right. But you've got to do the debugging
Yes, exactly.
if the numbers don't match.
Exactly. That's exactly what, and you'll end up in circles sometimes too. Have you tried, before we jump off, have you tried making agents yet? Like, you know, AI agents? That's been fun too. Oh my gosh. I was trying to use N8N, and which is one of the ones that you make agents to do certain things, and it's like, oh, that was not as easy as it looked either. Gonna have the pros involved.
So what agent did you make, and like what did it do, or could it do?
Failed in my attempts. I was trying to get scrape data from YouTube to do certain, you know, keyword searches and things like that, and failed miserably. But
what tool did you use for that?
N8N. So it is a really powerful tool, and again, I just haven't had enough time to
play with it. Yeah,
play with it. But yeah, and I don't have any technical abilities whatsoever. Like, I'm a complete nut and numpty when it comes to that stuff. Give me science, don't give me technology stuff. But someone who's halfway technology literate would be able to work it out, I'm sure. But I just go, ah.
I tried.
I'm screaming from the room, you know.
maybe hire somebody later to do that. Well, as always, these conversations are absolutely fascinating. Your podcast is pushing the limits. My podcast is Live Beyond the Norms. We both seem to be kind of in that space, right? Live beyond the norms, pushing the limits. Like that's
Being
very
extreme. And I mean, I have to say, Chris, like your product, I've just had me and Mum take our My Vital C today. We take it all the time, and you know, like you're a good role model. You look at you. You look like you're like 25 or something like that. Like it's ridiculous. It's like yeah. So obviously something's working. you know.
I don't know if I shared this with you because I think this is relevant. I'm doing a lot of the things, right? You know, you can't be on a podcast, I don't think, and not go like, I should try that. I should stay focused. I should eat better. Like that would be almost impossible. But at the Health Optimization Summit, which was in Austin, next to me was a booth that measures ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rate.
Oh yeah.
Right. And what ESR, basically the way it works is you take a drop of blood into a capillary tube, you expose it to gravity, right? So you hold it vertically, and then you measure the rate at which the blood cells separate from the blood plasma. And that's an indication of your inflammatory status, right? And there's some debates. I've had people come back and like, yeah, it's useless. And I've also had people come back and say like, this is a pretty useful value. So wherever that lands, I took that test at that Health Optimization Summit in Austin, and it had a biological age component to it. And it had me 20 plus years younger than my biological age, chronological age, which is great. And I'm doing a lot of this stuff, but also everybody at our booth was significantly lower biologically than their chronological age. And I can promise you there are people at my company who are not doing the things. So it's a really good kind of indication. And we're pushing forward, a clinical trial looking at HSCRP, which is an inflammatory marker. So I'm excited about what's going on.
Well, yeah, again, my immune age calculator might help you too. Like we're just breaking that down. Like if you put in the data into the calculator and see if it's affecting the immune system and things too, when we get stabilized.
Yeah.
Because we put HSCRP in there as well. But yeah, I think, a lot of these technologies are still like developing and things. And like with my immune age calculator, I've used scientifically validated ratios, like the neutrophil, NLR and LMR and monocytes and lymphocytes and all of these ones, right? PIV and SII. But then I've come up with my own composite score, which is my own formulation. And so that one's not validated, but it's an interesting. I mean, it's based in the science and the fact that all these ratios together is being weighted at certain levels that makes sense in regards to what these do in the immune system. So it's defensible, but it's not proven yet, this index score. The rest of it is like it's scientific, but it's really, beneficial to get a number, right? It's beneficial to sort of understand, okay, you've got I've got a bit more thrombotic risk than I want, or I want, this, but to have a number is simple for people, right? So mine is like I'm 57 in 2 weeks. And mine came back at a 42-year-old immune system level. So I was quite pleased with that.
Yes.
And I do have a very low inflammatory, my inflammation scores are very low and all of that sort of stuff. So it does have an effect, all the stuff that we're doing. It's just that you have to stack quite a lot. And a lot of people expect miracles from just taking one thing or doing one thing or doing a small amount of one thing, which often is, compared to what we're doing. And maybe we're over killing it, quite possibly.
No. Okay, maybe a little. Maybe a little. It's interesting because you say doing one thing, and I've had a couple of interviews, and there's people who kind of really lean heavy into this, which is a lot of the stuff that you should be doing is saying no, right?
Yeah.
Saying no to whatever the things are, right? And getting your diet right is often more about saying no to the wrong things than it is about saying yes to the right things. Like you potentially need to fill the gap, but
100, like you can't, like we used to say, you can't outrun a bad diet. You can't. It's more important than you know, all the exercise and, you know, everything else which is crucially important, all of it. But if you've got a bad diet, then it's probably the place to start, and hydrating and, you know, getting your electrolytes and nutrients right and all of that sort of stuff. But if you're putting shit in, you know, you're going to get shit out, no matter, even if you're taking all these great supplements on top of, you're just fighting it. It might help a little bit. But, you know, but then things come at you at life. Like my hubby got chemical poisoning a couple of weeks ago as a firefighter, and went into a fire with a BA mask that had, you know, really powerful disinfectants that they used that hadn't been washed properly.
Oh, wow.
And, so got a chemical sort of like burns, sort of like inflammation and rashes and shit on his face that, you know, and that's taking weeks. And, you know, I'm doing everything. Like I've been, you know, doing pretty much everything for him, and we're still like struggling, you know, like it takes a while when you get something that nasty to, you know, to get it back out of the body. It's takes a while. Biology's not like snap the fingers and, you know, and he's got hyperbaric and PMF and red light and intravenous vitamin C and rejuvenate and, you know, everything else going in. And still, you know, still a bit of a struggle.
Try some My C topical. I don't know if you've played around with that.
Bloody good point. Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell this kind of from my side. I'll tell this story and wrap it up. So I've had literally longevity clinics, like the staff at longevity clinics walk up to my booth. This was at the A4M Longevity Fest. And I describe it this way, right? A little bit of a hyperbole, but they were like, yeah, that opportunity to live longer, get that out of the way. That that opportunity to just, I don't know, have better wellness, get that out of the way. I'm visiting your booth because I want your face serum, your Reduo. Have I ever sent one of these to you?
Yes, absolutely brilliant. I'm running out though, so we might have to stop and rejuvenate for some skin stuff.
I'll get another one sent to you. But like that's the joke. These longevity experts are like, live longer, live better, like whatever. I just want that stuff because it's amazing. And
yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. But I hadn't actually thought of it for this situation, you know. And so I'll definitely go and try that.
Yeah,
I'll let you know how it goes. All right, my friend.
Lisa, this is always amazing. I'm so glad we get together and connect. And so we'll push this out. It's out live on all sorts of places. We'll probably rerun it. And then we'll see you again next time.
Thank you, my friend.